real quick, I'd also like to talk a little bit about the Dewey Library because that really evolved out of customer service, of trying to create a space for a library that really had been that really had the Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the Dewey Library, an innovative approach. I'm going to quickly run through this because we're not really going to talk about all of this. So really, I mean, it evolved out of listening to customers and potential customers. Basically, several things happened. That we did the surveys once a year, as well as customer feedback forms. So people were able to write in what they thought about the library. The other thing is that I'm willing to talk to a stump. So whenever I found someone who was a non-library user, I would always be like, hey, let's go have a cup of coffee and let's sit down and talk. And so out of that, really we had the original floor plan for the Perry Library out in Gilbert. And through talking to people, we knew they really kind of wanted a retail model, something that was more comfortable, at ease to them, that would have those third place characteristics, that it really would be that home away from home or work, that it would be a liberating and free space, and that would encourage people to stay and return and be playful. So basically, you saw the original floor plan. This is then the final floor plan of how we chose to break up the Perry Library. You can kind of see and so we knew to make it the most successful that we could, it had to have really good signage. So we worked really hard with the signage, and this was one of many concepts, and we kept playing with it and looking at it from the customer point of view to get what actually worked. And you also see that we had wheels on shelves, shelves on wheels, so that the space was as flexible as possible. We had display elements like a bookstore. Again, everything was on wheels as much as possible. Comfortable furniture. That was one of the things that came up actually in focus groups that we kept talking about. Was someone had said that they would travel beyond the more comfortable, they would go from the larger collection to the smaller, more comfortable facility. So we really bumped up the amount of comfortable seating in this library. And really, we did a taste test pretty much to make sure that all the chairs were comfortable for people. We sent over a team of staff and made them all sit in chairs. Unless they all agreed that it was comfortable, we didn't even consider it. And you can see here we did the fiction, big signage, and elements of the cataloging were really based on BISAC, which is the bookstore industry standard. And so BISAC would do cooking and then would go into regional and ethnic. We simplified that by going Cooking International. So here's what it would look like in the online catalog. And then below is what would be at another branch if that title showed up there. And these are the spine labels for that. Now, it was interesting when going through all of this, because when I first came up with the idea of doing a Dewey List collection, there was an uncertainty, but it was more since the library outsourced everything, we had to talk to the vendors. Talking to the vendors, I mean, was great because, I mean, we called them and both Baker and Taylor and Brodart were both very much online with what we were doing. Because the library has, Maricopa County Library District has no cataloging staff. They have collection development people who are basically purchasing the titles, but all the processing is done on site. Back with the vendor, and then it's shipped to each individual library, so it arrives shelf ready to just be scanned in and put on the shelf. And so opening day was really interesting because we had talked about the mass chaos that could ensue because we've messed with Dewey and that people would just be lost. And what was really interesting was we actually had extra staff there for opening day. And when people came in the door, they didn't want to hear us telling them all about this new system that we had and it was easier for them. It was like you saw someone, they walked towards you and you saw their eyes scanning and you saw their lips say gardening, and then they just made a beeline for that section. So they took to it like a fish